Paul, thank you for joining me. This
Thank you for
is,
having me.
you're welcome. So this is our second video in a series of 10. And hopefully folks have watched the first series. And if they haven't, they're jumping in on this, the second video. If you're jumping in the second video, the series focuses on driving long-term sobriety. So what we're talking about is life extraordinary and sober. And what I shared in our first video is my commitment. And my commitment to people who've chosen sobriety is a commitment to the future of sobriety. And what I mean by that is you could be sober and depressed, which means you're living into a future of depression. Or you could be sober and alive. So I'm taking a stand for the future that a person lives into after choosing sobriety. So as to say, sober and alive, sober and extraordinary. And the reason why I wanted you here today, and the reason why, as you know, we're doing this series, is to bring people into what's real and what's possible after choosing sobriety. And so often, again, as your experience, traditional recovery isn't supporting people at accessing sobriety and aliveness, but rather living in the pain or the identity around addiction. So for a lot of people, it's sober and dead, or sober and anxious, or sober and not inspired in life. So this, you say it again, this 10-part series is to bring people into what's truly possible for them after choosing sobriety, hence the name Life Extraordinary and Sober. Today's video is on avoidance. And what we're going to do is we're going to explore today all the ways in which we avoid, and then as the counselor yourself, the professional in the field,
No, me.
the hero of our story.
Yep.
We'll talk about all the ways in which avoiding occurs and the consequence of avoiding or the impact of avoiding, however you choose to bring that in. Mm-hmm. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Share about why you're here.
Hey guys, my name is Paul. Thank you, Pete, for introducing me. I'm in long-term sobriety. I'm choosing to be here because this is my community. My community is the recovery community. And being in long-term sobriety, being a part of this community, it means a lot to me to let them know that there's something more than just the usual out there. The thing that didn't work for me after a certain amount of time, there's something more for us. And that's something I need the world to know. And that's my commitment here. And that's my reason for doing these, is to make sure that in any way I can, that people are informed of a different way, something to do after you've gotten sober, you're on your journey. There's something more. No, that's the reason why I'm here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for bringing us into the possibility. So what we're talking about today is avoiding. And so why are we talking about avoiding?
Ooh, specialty. I like it. We're talking about avoiding because that's what we learn to do from either whether we're avoiding feelings, or when we get sober, we learn to avoid people, places, things, thoughts, feelings, actions. We are told avoid everything and avoid the feelings of everything. And so by doing that, we're successful in early sobriety. If I avoid, I'm successful at early sobriety. But as soon as you get past the fatal funnel of the first couple of months or whatever it is for some people, there's no one telling us to, hey, okay, you've avoided enough. Now it's time to start, slowly working on not avoiding. There is nothing out there for that. And we find ourselves, we being people in long-term sobriety, sticking to programs like AA, 12 steps, therapy, these other programs that are peer-based, and just avoiding still and staying away from emotions and people. And after, a couple of more months, years, decades, we're miserable, we're angry, we're sad, We don't have any feelings in life that are genuine. We're hollow people. And we think it's just us. We think we're not doing the system right, or we're told we're not doing the system right because I should be happy, or I should be sober, and feeling like all those stock photos they put in those stupid fucking AA ads, or the stupid, sober and alive ads that they have on TV. It's all stock photos, but they tell you that's what you should be. And so when you're, 6 years into sobriety, and haven't left your house except to go to work, and haven't had a genuine interaction with someone in I don't know how long, you feel like you're a failure again. You feel as if that, this was all for naught. But what we're not told is you're still avoiding, because there's no one to tell us that. And for me, there was no one to, until I was introduced to TMD. But the avoidance has been there from before getting sober, and during and after getting sober. That avoidance is a constant if no one is there to shake us away from that.
So you're talking about yourself when you say sober 6 years, no intimate connections or real
Yes.
vulnerable connections.
Yep.
Depression.
Yeah, definitely. Transgender. Heard something. Yeah, that's definitely me. So
And so, but beyond you, there are people. I know that's hard.
that's, I need to check some resources on that. I check your sources. I don't think that's true, but okay, I'll play ball. There are more people besides me.
Maybe we'll research that to see if that's the
In
case.
theory.
Like your clients.
But yeah, they're people.
But they're your clients, so it's still you.
They are, so they matter.
So they matter. It's you. Now, have you noticed what you're saying in other people?
It's an epidemic in recovery.
Is that right?
The epidemic of avoidance in recovery. There's a fucking slogan for you.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's use it. But how do I know what you're saying is real? Okay, let's back up. I mean, I'm sober, and I'm depressed, and the messaging is that I'm not following the steps right. And why I'm here is because I'm inspired by the work that's possible for people after choosing sobriety. That's why I'm here, because I look into the world and I see a group of people who get that they're fucked up and aren't being supported at building something extraordinary in their lives. Maybe I even need to back up even more and say that the addict's brain is obsessive, and that obsession, that brain's ability to obsess, is actually the tool one needs to build something extraordinary in their lives, and that addicts aren't being supported at accessing this aspect of themselves, being supported at accessing the type of training that empowers them to use this extraordinary compulsive mechanism to build something. That's what I see. That's why I'm here. I'm committed to supporting people in sobriety use this pre-existing compulsive mechanism, place that mechanism on the creative act of your life, and you're going to succeed, like on building a business or building a relationship or being an effective parent. You get that mechanism placed on that skill set, back it up, that goal, then the addict will succeed. Okay, that's why I'm here. So now, looking at what you just said a minute ago, is there is an epidemic of people who are sober and dead.
Yes.
Now, one of the things you said in the last video that was shocking, meaning I liked it, was when you were struggling with feeling good, being alive, being fulfilled after being sober. Is the relationship you have to yourself as broken. And so because you thought you were broken, then it made sense that you weren't doing the steps correctly, or that's why you are where you are.
Yes. I'm not sure. Yeah. So, yeah, that
Now,
was the.
would you say that's a part of it? Like, would you say that's what's going on? Why is there an epidemic? You know, after all that ranting, right? Why would you say there's an epidemic?
So, but of course, going off my experience, as it's the, closest to me, is that, and those around me and my clients, as for those of you who don't know, I do work in the recovery field. It's better to do more damage in the system than outside, I like to say. There's an epidemic, and why I'm saying that is because this idea of avoidance is not discussed. It is under the surface this whole time, that it is a part of such a big system that's been for so long that no one knows that they're avoiding, and they're telling you that to go back to the broken thing, you're being told that you'll never get sober without 12 steps, or if you don't do A, B, and C, you're not going to get sober. You need to fix yourself. You need to right yourself. You need to correct these things in a specific order, or sobriety isn't a reality for you. And so, we are in this model that is hell bent on making people go through what they believe is sobriety, and they believe is the steps, whether it's 12 steps or not. The belief is the steps, and the model they still say, as they tell you to do this, is there is no one size fits all model. Yet we're all told the same thing. So, the epidemic comes from everyone being told they're broken, everyone being told that you need to change your life, change yourself, change the people, change. But they also say, don't go there, don't think this, don't say this, don't believe this, don't do this. And so there's no growth. It's all recession. It's all backing up. It's all shoring up defenses. So, I was told by a coach when I was younger, he said, you guys were playing, you weren't playing to win, you were playing not to lose. And so modern sobriety recovery is, and let's face it, if 12 steps and a lot of these other things are still on a book that was written in the 20s, which I don't know of many medical models we still use from the 20s. So there's kind of an issue there by itself. But if you think about what they're doing, they're teaching us as an addict to not to be winning in life, not to feel, not to be successful, not to create, but just not to use. That's it. Everything about them is how not to use. And my slogan is, not using is the easiest part of sobriety. I can fucking lock myself in a closet and I'm not going to use. It's easy. But I'm still going to go crazy, because that's the shit that gets us to use, is the not feeling and then feeling. The years of addiction, all the bad shit that we've done piles up until the day we decide to make that choice to get sober, and it all comes rushing back, and we're told to avoid. The going strategy is just avoid all these things for now. You'll deal with them as we go. But there's no one there at the end of that road to say, now you're ready. Or, when they say, we'll get to it when you're ready. No one's ever been fucking ready. No one's ready to do this shit. It's just, thinking you're going to wake up one day ready is the same thing as wishing in one hand, shitting in the other. It just doesn't, one's going to fill up first.
Ready to do what?
Wake up. What's that?
Ready to do what?
Ready to put the work in, or face your problems, or to stop avoiding. They don't see it as this. They see it as, tackling your life's problems, or how do they call it? They have slogans. I gotta write some slogans down next time. But this idea that you have all these things built up in your brain and yourself that is so wrong, that you need to avoid, and then someday when you're ready, you will work on fixing yourself, because you're so broken that everything you did before you decided to join 12 steps and get sober is wrong. You were born wrong. You acted wrong. You chose wrong. You are wrong. And so in order to correct that, you need to not be wrong. Not be right, just not be wrong.
It sounds like you're bashing 12 steps.
Oh, yeah, that's been my concern for a while, is that I don't like 12 steps. I don't. I think it's a fucking draconian system that creates disgusting people who are angry at the world and treat others like shit and don't get anywhere, but make people believe in fake ideals. And a lot of the people we're working with now have this fake thing out. Thankfully, you know, coming into TMD can't really be fake. So they're being confronted with it, but they're all admitting they've been putting on this front for years. And that's 12 steps. 12 steps is a pretty mask that they put on and then criticize everyone else for not wanting to join. I get sober without 12 steps. I haven't done one step. I've done any of them.
Well, you haven't, but so then how can you criticize them if you haven't done one step?
Because working in the field, having to work alongside of 12-step models, I'm working with all these people who are going through the 12-step models. I'm working within a 12-step model. So personally, I've not done any of them, but professionally, I am a part of this system. As much as, you know, I resist it at certain points, but and also being a part of, you know, being a therapist or a counselor for someone going through them, or a best friend, I'm going to hear a lot about it.
Here's my complaint about what you're saying. My complaint is that 12 steps works. Meaning I listen to you and I hear you say 12 steps doesn't work. If you follow the steps, you will stay sober.
Okay.
And the community is a stand for sobriety. And if you are participating in 12 steps and you are committed to the steps and committed to your community, you will be sober. And you also will experience relief and support and connection and possibility for yourself through your participation in the steps. Okay.
So you were siding with 12 steps. You're against me. Gotcha.
Right. So I'm siding with 12 steps and I'm against you. Yes. Let's keep going.
Against them.
Let's go. Let's go from there.
Okay. So yeah. You were saying, you know, where, you know, as somebody who hasn't gone through the steps and someone who hasn't gone through the steps as you haven't, being not in recovery. So, you know, where are you getting this, that 12 steps does work?
All right, hang on. So I'm not in traditional recovery.
Yes.
I'm not in 12-step recovery, but I'm certainly an addict and I have a compulsive brain, and either I am using porn, masturbation, and cocaine and alcohol and women, definitely women. Programmatically, I would in the past have sex with as many women as possible to manage my feelings. And today I use my compulsiveness to build this business, build this interaction with you, renovate my bathroom, be physically fit. I am placing my compulsivity on the creative act of my life, and I'm finding a tremendous amount of success in that. And so maybe I missed out on entering into 12 steps in the last 20 years of my life. And I don't have, per se, direct experience of completing the steps. So when I say that I think I see that 12 steps works for people, is you have millions and millions of people across the world who've used the steps to create sobriety. And you know, you have, and I have clients that are actively engaged in 12 steps and are 5 years sober because of their commitment to the steps. And so from that standpoint, I acknowledge the community, I acknowledge the 12 steps as a successful resource for supporting people at accessing sobriety. from drugs and alcohol or behavioral addiction. That aspect, works. And now, if I can continue.
I would love to.
That's the same aspect that doesn't work, because it doesn't allow for or take a stand for what occurs after accessing sobriety, which is what I was hearing you talk about. And from the standpoint of being resentful or angry, or, that in totality, the steps don't work. And so what I've come to see, and I like the banter. I mean, I'm willing, I accept your experiences. I don't mean to change or make them wrong, right? The breakdown for me, as I observe the 12 steps, is there isn't a drive for the creative process, and as you were saying, avoidance. So I'd like to do that, dwell in, dive in, what is avoidance, and what is the creative act? What, am I being clear? Am I, listening to me now? Would you say that I'm being clear about what I like and don't like?
I think we need to be, I think I need to hear more about the how the 12 step works for short term, that first step, but not second step. Or I think maybe, I went on a tangent of 12 steps. I think that kind of got us off the track of avoidance. I think this is a good thing for us to use at some point, but I think we need to focus on I need to focus on the avoidant part of just human behavior, 12 steps and not 12 steps.
Well, I think we'll get there. I mean, we are in, from my perspective, we are in the interaction that talks about avoidance, and in doing so, we're exploring ourselves, our positions, and we're, possibly, if we edit it this way, we're exposing these positions to the world, which I think is great.
Yeah, I agree that, we are definitely, we're not out of a wheelhouse. We're in that wheelhouse. I was thinking if we were going to stay on a avoidant specific track, then we would probably have to come back to the, before I started going on too much of a slant against the 12-step model. But if this is, like you said, this is still in the wheelhouse, we can edit it, make sure it works. I think the only thing for vagueness is the, saying that the 12 steps is something that in your experience you've seen work, and then, but that's the thing that doesn't make it work. So let's talk about avoidance. If I was listening, I'd be like, well, what do you mean? How does something work, not work?
Okay, I love it. So yeah, our focus is on avoidance. However, avoidance has to be generated, right? We've got to really bring to life what is avoiding, what's the consequence of avoiding. And so, meaning, if I asked you a year ago, are you avoiding? You might say, yeah, I don't leave my house, but you wouldn't say, for example, I'm avoiding anger.
Yeah, not at all.
Right. So there's levels of avoidance that we have the opportunity to bring to light. But to access that, right, to get to that conversation where we explore avoidance, I think where we are now is important, which is that 12 steps works, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. I'll give you an example. When a person enters into 12 steps, you get that you're broken. And initially that works. I am broken works. And it's important for the person to get that who they are is broken. And that insight sets in motion behaviors, sobriety, that the person traditionally didn't have access to. And I think there's a part of all of us that is broken. And the acceptance of being broken and the behaviors that come out of being broken. It's important to see. And if I create my life from the standpoint of being broken, then I'm always broken. And so out of getting you're broken, you can also begin to see that, for example, well, if I'm broken and I chose to be broken, then there's something beyond broken. There's the person choosing. And so this insight, that we're exploring, that there's more than I'm broken inside of me, sets in motion the possibility of discovering, well, who is this person choosing? What else exists in me besides broken? And can I begin to access these other aspects of myself that aren't broken? And or can I begin to access that I'm choosing, right? Versus broken or not broken. We're looking at, am I choosing? Do I get that I'm choosing? Do I have access to choosing? So if you put a time frame on it, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can put a time frame on all of a sudden when 12 step stops working. But I could say, if you've noticed being depressed, you're dead. If you've noticed that you're not accessing the life that you choose to access after choosing sobriety, after being sober, then 12 steps is no longer going to be a resource that brings you to the next level of life.
So, I think you brought up those great points about getting to that, broken is great at first, and is getting that catalyst to behavioral changes. That's, what we need. And then you talked about the seeing that, okay, if I'm choosing my life from broken, then it'll be broken. So somebody's choosing life. Where is that happening, right? The choosing, the final identity, the moment where you see that there's a choice, is that 12 steps? Or is that after 12 steps?
Yeah, when does a person have access to accessing what I think is real, that we choose our lives?
Yeah. When is
that? That insight exists through the work inside of TMD.
Okay.
And I don't believe exists inside of 12 steps.
And to be fair, I don't think it exists inside of anything I've seen as a professional in the field and a professional patient in the field.
Oh, other than your work in TMD?
Yeah, I have not seen this aspect anywhere else as well.
I understand. I appreciate you identifying, clarifying.
Yeah, so to kind of take so the reason I was asking that was because I'm going to try that some more times, being the motivational interviewing, like the Columbo questions, that, I'm playing the part of someone, that question of like, so when you say this, like, what is that, is that in TMD? Where is that? So, because I think that'll help with people listening to you, is if I'm asking from that standpoint. So like that question was, obviously I know what you're referencing, but that does help, because you kind of kept going from, they see that you're broken. And then when you realize that someone made that choice to be broken, then that choice, and you kind of kept going, and you didn't specify that was in 12 steps or after or before. So I figured that would help clarify that point.
Well, great. It was a great question, challenging me to look at that. I'm talking about a TMD distinction where I don't acknowledge the, where the distinction comes from. And, perhaps I'm being defensive, right? In that I'm protecting 12 steps. But I mean it, man. I think that there is real value, the community, the number of people, the locations in the world, the methodology. I mean, if you want to look at it from the perspective of it's cognitive behavioral therapy, it's like first grade cognitive behavioral therapy, and there's a great group that's leading it, and everyone's doing the same work, and you're going to be accepted for whatever, deficiency that you're struggling with. There's a value there. Okay, and maybe you have a different experience, you can share that. But if we look at, where are you a year later, and or why are you sober and depressed, what we're talking about is avoiding.
Yeah.
And that's why avoiding is our first video.
Of course.
And I would say let's start talking about avoiding in relation to, how am I in the 12 steps and avoiding? I'm sober. Or how am I sober and avoiding? And we could talk about, you personally could share about your experiences. But see, now I'm self-conscious and I'm not going to talk about TMD enough.
Should.
I did it wrong.
You did. I mean, I wanted to make sure that you understood how wrong it was. So I pointed it out. And so now you will avoid talking about certain things because it brings up feelings.
That's right. I'm avoiding. There I go, avoiding again.
Right? Avoidance I think that there's such a beauty to, what you said earlier about having addiction and addictive qualities and using them. There's something great about being obsessive over certain things. And I
Right.
think there's also something great about being avoidant of certain things. Like, I'm not going to go to the Australian outback. I'm avoiding seeing spiders so big they eat birds. I'm avoiding that consciously because ew. And so, and our ancestors used avoidant tactics and to keep us alive. And that's why we're here today via an evolutionary psychology mindset, is that we are alive due to a lot of these things, especially avoidance. So, avoidance is such an ingrained thing in us that it kept us alive. There's something positive to it, that we do it without knowing we're doing it. And for me, my biggest experience with avoidance was doing it everywhere in my life and being able to make very beautiful excuses for it that made it look like, I had camouflaged it. I had put a ghillie suit on it. I put it in the background it deserved. And I said, there's no avoidance there. I don't see avoidance. Do you see avoidance? I just see a good choice to not take a risk and hurt myself. That's not avoidance. That's being smart.
So for example,
not making friends after I got back from the military, when I came home, was, why would I set myself up to feel pain again like that, or to be lost again? Or why would I set myself up to feel this pain and then go use again? Because I was using because of the pain of losing my brothers. My friends who died overseas, their deaths were a big part of my use. So if I keep myself away from other people and I don't make friends, I don't use. That's a beautiful symphony of reasons that don't that don't explain and do mask the avoidance behind it all.
And were you supportive of that? Were you, in your therapy and in the sobriety work that you were doing, were you supported at avoiding?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's, there are things like making friends and things in the community aspects of 12 steps and other programs that was not supported. But it didn't have to be. There was enough avoidance being supported in, it's better to not go back home. Even though you're a couple of years sober and you want to go home for Thanksgiving, there's a lot of issues around there. You're probably not ready yet. Why don't you just come here instead? I know you want to see your family again, but let's not cross that bridge just yet. It's a big example that myself and a lot of people go through, is being supported in not returning to the scene of the crime or to a place that is emotionally raw, and having that people, places, things be a constant avoidant thing.
What do you mean people, places? You've said that a couple of times now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you're told literally to avoid people, places, and things? Yes.
Yeah. In early sobriety, you were told to, write out a list of triggers of people, places, and things that cause you to relapse, that caused you to use, and things literally to avoid.
That sounds great. That sounds like a good thing to do. Initially in recovery, that sounds like a good thing to do.
And I have worksheets I use to this day for my clients who are in early recovery, because I don't want them to be confronting hard emotional things early in sobriety, and nor should I. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the problem?
The problem comes when you are a year, 2 years, however long you personally, everyone's going to be different. But after a couple of years or a couple of months, when you are in a place where things are now not just avoiding negative, but now the dragnet of avoidance has scooped up all of these experiences. You don't go home to see your family because, your neighborhood could be triggering. You don't talk to your, friends, or you don't make friends because they could be triggering. So you're giving away all these experiences. You don't leave your job because your job was a safety job you got when you were sober, and that's the only job you knew in sobriety. So thing, place, people, you continuously avoid because it worked. It got me sober. So therefore it works. And it's not a crazy idea to keep doing that if it worked. But if your only reason for living is to not use, you're not fucking living.
I think
It's
the
not
other piece I'm hearing, and let me know if what you're saying is true. Again, I haven't had these direct experiences, is there isn't a platform by which someone can begin to work on the pain, the programmatic barriers to performance that keep people from being able to feel or see. I go directly into talking about TMD so quickly that maybe you can help me, slow down this train here that we're going, which is, so you've got
programmatic.
people who are avoiding,
Mhm.
and so then you're not going home, but then there's no space to work on what stops people from going home and being successful, right? That's what you're saying, right? So as long as I stay inside this bubble here and I don't do anything outside of this bubble, then I'm safe. Well, that's true. I'm hearing you say that's true. You're safe, yes?
Yes.
You're also saying that then there's no additional bubble to get into prior to going home, that you can do the kind of work that could empower you to go home. That's what you're saying.
Instilled in there. So there are types of work. Exposure therapy is a version of this next bubble. But it is a very singular view. As somebody trained in exposure therapy, I can tell you it is focused on a very singular traumatic experience. Even if it works on avoidant feelings around use, you're not getting the care that you need in all aspects of life. You're just getting that one focus. It's a great tool, and I really encourage people who are very can't do anything, or phobias it's usually used for. And then there is some of the steps are designated to re-engage yourself into society, but they are surface level steps. They are. I have not been privy to any of the steps that were emotionally challenging and the next step after. It's confront these past experiences, these past pains, as if they are still here. And then that's it. There's no learning. There's no, creating these new behaviors. There's nothing there for that.
There's no community that's taking a stand for transparency, radical honesty, accountability, right? That's what we're talking about. So TMD really, that's where TMD fits, right? It fits powerfully after we have an established relationship to our sobriety, and we begin to look for more. A powerful step to take is then into your next bubble, so to speak, next community, which is focusing on how do you go about healing from, and or how do you go about building new relationships, and or how do you go about building a successful career?
How do you go about building your life? I mean, you're 100% right. In vivo exposure therapy is great in one-on-one, but that's a small setting with one other person, your therapist, that you work on some behaviors. But when the session's over, and you go home by yourself, or whatever, you go back to the world that you just came from. 12 steps and other sober support communities are great because they are giving you some support, but that's also, there's not a support group that you are all the same level of sobriety on the same step, moving together as a group. You're getting people in that are just coming out of detox, people who are still using. So there's no growth from past that 12th step. After you get through all these steps, you go through them again and again. That's the method, is to go through them again and again. So there's no community that is built to take that after you are safe in your sobriety, safe enough to feel something in your sobriety. There is nothing. there. That's where TMD is. That is the TMD sweet spot, and that's where there is the most need, without people knowing there is the most need, is that next move, that next step outside of the steps.
I really like the way you describe people, places, and things. Same, so I have relationships with people in sobriety. I'm sober. I keep those relationships. I have places I go to where I'm sober and safe in sobriety. I stay there. A lot of people, I've noticed who come into TMD will move across the country to live in New Hampshire as a result of having their sobriety be in New Hampshire, and they can't leave New Hampshire.
And
this is what
another epidemic. Yeah, that's a part of that epidemic. Yeah.
I get it now.
Good. About fucking time. So that's it's good to bring that up, because that is a big part of this, is that, when we saw COVID hit, I was working as a therapist attached to sober living that worked with all addictions, not just heroin or anything like that. So we had a bunch of clients come in we had one client who was 23 years sober. We had another client who was 15, another client who was 17, all these people between 5 and 23 years sobriety. And because they couldn't go to their meeting anymore, that's the only difference. They could do it on the phone, they could do it on Zoom, but because they physically said, I couldn't go, I didn't know what to do. And so I drank.
Are you saying?
That's where that avoidance comes in, is yes, it's kept them, it helped them stay sober for 23 years, but when something changes, they have not built up the skills necessary to deal with that stress.
Right. Yes. So you're saying, I'm hearing, in time, the avoidance of people, places, and things that drove sobriety now drives relapse.
Yes, very much so.
I got that. See, that's what I got. I explain it differently. I like the way you're explaining it. You're really explaining it to me from the model, from having direct experience of the model. So yeah, you lose your job, or someone dies, or you get divorced, or anything changes, and you don't have to use my language, emotional capacity to manage. You don't have the skill set, like in language, to drive the type of performance strength you're looking for in the marriage, or after the marriage, or after so-and-so died, or as a result of being fired, or right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that my explanations are coming out that way, because that is from the inside, as a person in sobriety, in recovery, and someone who works closely with it and has commitment to that community. Is I mean, 90% of the relapses I see, no one ever just relapses. I talk about prelapse behaviors. You start having, you start avoiding people, or you start doing this. There's behaviors that happened well before the relapse that, which is not a secret in recovery. But, if we look at 90% of the relapses I'm seeing, they're coming from an event. They're coming from losing their job, losing their meeting, losing, their wife leaves them, their husband is now lost his job, and now there's a child involved. There's, something happens that they have never been shown or told that there needs to be this emotional capacity, this emotional grit, this emotional understanding of what pain really is. We spent years dulling pain with heroin, booze, sex, violence, whatever it is. And then when we get sober, we are terrified to feel again, because we haven't for years. And so we look for something that will let us feel, but to a certain extent, only up to a point where I'm not triggered or I'm not uncomfortable. And that's what therapy is for people in early sobriety. That's what 12 steps is for people to get a little uncomfortable, but not pushing, not getting too past where they want to be. When people are forgetting that even though they've taken the drug away or the alcohol away, there's still an addict in there. There's still somebody who is just sober, who is still making decisions that are now going to last for a long time, that are still making decisions as an addict. You know, you can't change. You're not gonna, again, you're not gonna wake up and be a different person. So just because you stop, you know, shooting up doesn't mean you're not an addict anymore for those, for that next however long until you start making active choices that work against your negative self-harming addiction to a positive addiction. But
I get avoiding, you know, as a result of our talk today, I'm certainly seeing avoiding in a new framework.
it's everywhere. It's
Yeah,
very,
you know, again, I like the piece where it's avoiding works and then all of a sudden it stops working and then sabotages the person's ability to access sobriety.
yeah. I mean,
So you started participating in TMD with me as your coach, leading the curriculum, a part of a group. And through your participation, you began to explore greater aspects of avoiding that you weren't already aware of.
Yeah, it's
So you
it's a very
expanded your awareness of what you were avoiding, the emotions you were avoiding, the conversations you were avoiding, the relationships that you were avoiding. And as you moved into those feelings and relationships, you transformed your commitment to creating your life.
Yeah.
You want to talk with the group more about your experiences?
Yeah, I so, you know, TMD as my intro for any people who have heard me to speak before, TMD came into my life when I had lost my dream job. I was in a severe depression because, again, I didn't know how to deal with these extreme negative emotions. These extreme emotions, it doesn't have to be negative or whatever people use as negative. So I wasn't functioning, and then, you know, Pete called me after being contacted by a mutual acquaintance, and then after I started to do the work, and, you know, that avoidance became that picture of what I was avoiding as someone who was living a life as a person who was very emotionally aware and all of this. I realized that I was looking through the keyhole into avoidance. And as I started working with you and working in the TMD and in the community, that vision of what I was avoiding, how I was avoiding, and when I was avoiding began to open and widen. And as I started seeing, like, holy shit, not just avoiding people, places, things anymore. That was, you know, that's a very broad thing. I'm avoiding understanding more about this. I'm avoiding the feelings that I'm having that aren't so easy to explain. I broke it down to very simple explanations, which was avoidance. I was using debilitating migraines as avoidance. The idea that I was using migraines was so beyond my comprehension that I was angry at the thought that somebody would even think I was doing that to myself. Yet, as I fought through those avoidant tendencies and was supported by the community in TMD, supported by you, supported by my own drive to be somebody, you know, to make these choices and be that person that my future is, and my come from is, that position where I come from to make my future is what I mean by come from, is I started understanding that, holy shit, there's a whole world under the layer of avoidance. And I was avoiding that world of avoidance under the layer of avoidance, right? It's if you break something down that you're doing that is causing pain in your life, if I break something down that's causing pain in my life or causing me to be unhappy or whatever, I will find an onion of avoidance. every time. And that was not known to me before TMD at all. I thought avoidance was simple. I avoided relationships because I was being tactful and I was being resourceful and only letting people in that weren't going to hurt me. And so I was alone because there's no way I would ever be able to do that. But just like using, if I lock myself in a closet, I'm not going to use dope. If I lock myself in a closet, I'm not going to have to be hurt by anyone either. And so I tricked myself and avoided seeing that that's what I was doing. I was locking myself in an apartment, convincing myself that I was living, being told that I was living because I was sober. I had a job. I was doing what I do best. I was in a field that, I was shining in. All the while, everything was eroding beneath me, and I wouldn't look at it. I wouldn't look at what was happening because that would mean actually having to be honest with myself, confront myself, and have feelings that I didn't know how to feel. As the saying goes in TMD, I didn't see what I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I was driving blind for years until that keyhole turned into the windshield.
You're blind to being blind.
I'm blind to being blind. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't see what you didn't see.
Yeah.
And then you had to look at that you're blind to being blind.
Which is not easy for someone who made a life for himself as the needing to be the smartest man in the room, needing to be good at this therapy thing and this emotional intelligence thing. I avoided even further after being shown that I was not seeing what I couldn't see. I wanted to even not see it more, because how am I going to keep this persona up if I'm proven to not see something? And so that avoidance was there, begging me on, irking me on, telling me to keep avoiding. But I made the choice that day that you and I were working together, that, and the basic training and TMD, I said, I backed away from that avoidance. And even one peek to the other side, to not avoiding, was enough for me to see the lie that I was living, that I was creating a prison in my own world based on avoidance and not being able to see what I didn't know was there.
Yeah, let's see if we can generate what you're talking about here. So when you're in a car, you know that you have a blind spot in your car. So that's an understanding that the blind spot exists inside of the understanding, your understanding. So it's known. And so if I say to you, you have a blind spot, you'd say, yes, I know. Mm-hmm. What's being proposed here isn't that you had a blind spot that you were aware of. So you describe not knowing that you had blind spots like I'm looking through the keyhole. And you began to expand your awareness of not blind spots. And this is what's difficult to get, but an awareness of that you were blind to a commitment to observing blind spots.
My brain hurt. Say again.
Yeah.
Okay. That didn't make sense.
It's not the blind spot that's the issue.
Okay.
Right? It was your unwillingness to begin to explore that you had blind spots.
Almost as if I was avoiding.
So you were avoiding observing blind spots, right? Or you were avoiding observing that you're avoiding. So yes. Again, we're not talking about the observation of the blind spot, or we're not talking about the observation of the trauma. What we're talking about is that you were avoiding addressing the trauma. Mm-hmm. We began to discuss that you're avoiding addressing the trauma, or avoiding addressing a feeling, or avoiding addressing the thoughts, etc. So we're not in addressing the trauma. What we're in is addressing, well, why do you want to avoid?
Yes.
Then we begin to explore this idea that people are blind to being blind. We begin to explore the idea that we are unwilling to accept that we're avoiding confronting certain aspects of ourselves. Now, that interaction doesn't move us into confronting ourselves. That interaction moves us into being aware of that we're avoiding confronting ourselves, which, is crazy to say, oh, we just started confronting ourselves. So how do you want to explain everything we just talked about?
How do I shut this off? Yeah. So I want to avoid. Yeah. The way as I think you explained it very well with the idea of these blind spots is that I'm driving, looking through a keyhole, that I'm doing this. It's not someone pushing me down doing this, but I actively do not know that it's my hand that's doing this.
Right.
But it is my hand.
No. I'm not doing that.
Right? Oh no, this isn't my hand. What are you talking about? This is someone else's hand.
And that's how people live their lives. That's what you're saying, right? We live our lives looking through the keyhole, acting like somebody else is making us look through that keyhole.
This is not my hand. This is somebody else's hand. And so what TMD gave me was this. I couldn't block that slap because this is fucking hand is blocking 75% of my vision. And then when you realize it's your own fucking hand, it's not this, you're not going to all of a sudden now, I'm good. Thank you for the fucking lesson. I'm going to go confront the world and be perfect. It's, what do I do now? It's a shocking
That's the beginning. The beginning is getting in touch with, all I want to do is be blind, and all I want to do is avoid. And so in the books that I've written, I'm always talking about blindness to being blind. And yet I heard this great analogy in the past. I think my father shared it with me. It's like you're in a car, and rather than having your hands on the steering wheel, you have your hands on the rear view mirror. Right? So you're trapped in your past, trying to drive the car, and you're getting in a lot of accidents, and you don't understand why. Right? I mean, we don't get that. We don't get that. We got to take our hands off of the rear view, put them on the car, on this, and all of a sudden you can begin to, it's like, I drive.
Yeah. Or all of a sudden you realize, holy shit, I'm in control, but I've never learned how to drive.
Right.
What do I do now? What the fuck am I want to go back here. Or
I even observe that my hands are here, and I notice that there's a steering wheel, and I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to stay trapped in my past. I'm going to stay trapped in my pain. So you begin to observe that there's a real value for your pain. You need your pain.
Yeah.
And so I remember working with
avoidance and value and pain. They're not here. They are different sides of the spectrum of understanding each other. And that's not avoidance, knowing this, that's for sure.
I remember you struggling with the notion that your pain was something you were using, and how painful it was for you to come to grips with that you were using your pain.
Yeah.
And this in conversation this is tough to get. Like, this is hard. Like, this is damn difficult for a person to be responsible for.
Yeah. And I'll speak for me because it's the only person I can speak for, is that, years of going to therapy, years of training to be a therapist, years of trying to fix these problems, and then to be in this position where I now am able to see that the car is not being driven by some madman. Well, it is. I'm driving, and it's to now have to accept. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of this whole beginning stages of TMD, beginning stages of seeing, is we want to place blame. Especially as Americans, as humans, we need blame. We need a period on every sentence. We don't like unfinished circles, and we need someone to take the blame. And so, as I was able to start seeing that, wait, maybe it is me. Maybe I am and that notion began, that resistance, that programming avoidance was like, fuck no. You've spent so long trying to do this. You cannot take responsibility for this. I will not allow it. My avoidance would not allow me to take responsibility because I've spent years shirking responsibility
For your pain.
So it's for my pain, for my trauma, for all the choices. All these things were being shirked and avoided to the pain, shirked and avoided to trauma. And so for me to sit there and say, I'm using this, that's the same thing as someone being one of the biggest televangelists in the world to realize they don't believe in God. Like that is just, I mean, talk about, your entire existence is now fake, and it was avoidance. It wasn't real. My entire existence was built on a false premise. It was built on this idea that it was this, it was them, it was over here. The control were somewhere else.
It was my war trauma, my PTSD.
The control of my trauma, my PTSD, the control of using these things, using this pain, and now to open my eyes and see that I'm actually sitting at the control center, pushing all the buttons, making the pain real and making the pain go to this part of my life. So I can't. So I have to avoid this, or to get to a point like that. It is very difficult for myself, for anyone to get to that point where I'm admitting to myself that this is real. And so that avoidance was very big.
When you say this is real, I really want you to be careful where you stop describing.
Okay.
When you say this is real, what you're saying is, I believe, is that the pain that I'm having, I'm creating, and the idea that I'm creating my pain is real. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So, coming to terms with that, this pain is being cultivated by me, being used by me, being blamed by me.
How do you get that? How do you have somebody get that? I mean, we're doing this video with the intention to share, what's possible more, that there's more. I mean, change the title to more. You're sharing about your experience. I mean, I remember fighting consistently, the amount of work, I call that the work, the amount of work it takes for a person to come to grips with the possibility that they're using their pain. I mean, how many people right now are watching this video saying, I am not creating my pain? Did you already turn the video off because you don't want to get in touch with that you're creating your pain?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very big concept to even consider, to process.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you for being here today and for, exposing your process, that, where you're able to get in touch with what you're creating. And it doesn't mean the pain goes away, right? It means, right? What does it mean for you?
How I use it. I get to choose how I use my pain to motivate, to drive my life, to drive transformation in my life, to make the choices in the future that I want, or to go back to what I was doing.
That's right.
And blindly not acting as if I wasn't choosing to hurt myself, to limit myself, to stay safe. Yeah, it's a big thing when we tell ourselves we're doing this stuff to stay safe. We have to put these fucking annoying air quotes up, because safe isn't being miserable locked in an apartment. Safe isn't injecting heroin into your neck because your veins are all shot because you couldn't stop fucking feeling, so you had to use heroin. That's not safe, but your brain says it's safe. Your avoidance says it's safe. So when we say safe, it has to be in air quotes, because I don't know about you guys, but shooting an unknown liquid into my veins is not a safe behavior. That's insanity. But that's the lengths our avoidance will go. That's the lengths my avoidance will go. Is we'll be going to a point where I'm doing things that are so unsafe, yet I'm convincing myself I'm safe. It's against all logic. But that's avoidance.
And the moment you get your avoiding, it's not like it's gone. It's now the work begins to build new behavior.
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, interrupt away, sir. Avoid me avoiding. Avoid, avoid, avoid.
I love the interaction. I mean, I love the conversation we're having, and who you are in the conversation is the expert in,
Pain.
Yeah, experientially, you're the expert in avoiding and using to avoid, and also the work it takes to get your life back. And you are. I mean, you are doing some extraordinary work. And would you like to share with the group? I say group like there's somebody else here.
There is
programmed to operate that way.
Well, there is. There's thousands of people watching this.
That's right. That's right. Thousands of people watching. Share with the group the new you, and or what you're now, who you are now committed to being, the human being that you choose to be in your life today.
So let me do it. All right. So yes, thank you. I will share. I'm taking a stand. I'm choosing to take care of myself now. I'm making the active choices in my life to take care of myself, to be responsible. That's not something that just happened. It's something that I've been working on for a while, making choices here and there, but they're my choices. And an example recently that I think Pete, we were alluding to, was the discussion we had the other day, was I wake up early for my job. I was making very vague agreements with myself and choices, and I would say, I'll go to bed at this time, but I wanted to feel good, and I'm playing video games or I'm doing something else. So instead of going to bed at a reasonable time and being able to sleep, wake up, be present, be responsible, be myself, my who I can be, I chased that feeling good in the moment and would stay up later and later and later. Then tomorrow would come, I'd be miserable, be falling asleep at work. I would be, not my full capacity. And then that's that night, it's the same option. I would make that same choice. So now, making this active choice that I've made to choose self-care, to choose my responsibility and my integrity and my agreements, I chose to start going to bed at 9:45 instead of whenever I wanted to, regardless of how I feel. If I'm playing a game or I'm writing and I feel like I'm in the moment and I feel good, I feel my alarm go off, I still have that moment of fine, like I'll deny myself this feeling good for now, whatever, need to go to bed. And this happened the first time, and it's happened subsequently, is that a few minutes after I feel like all pissy and like a little kid kicking dirt on his way home, I feel good. I feel empowered, because and I talked to Pete about this the other day, and we kind of worked on it, and it's we came into the realization it was that my choice to take care of myself is not something that I've done in the past. This is something that is making my future, the future that I want. And it's because of my choices. I'm not passive in my life anymore. I'm an active participant in making these choices. And so that alone is a major part of my life now that I didn't have access to 6 months ago, or however long it was before I started working with TMD and Pete. So that's the possibilities here. And my stand is for showing people in my community, in any fucking community, I don't give a shit, that there is a choice. There's choices out there. There's things that you're avoiding, things that you can't see, but there's a way to see them. And there's a way to get yourself that option to make that choice. And that's my stand, is to do whatever I can and to pursue this calling, pursue this inspiration that I have to help people, to not just help them, but help them help themselves, help them see something that there isn't other ways to see this, and to get this information out there and stand for you guys, stand for the people who want something better but don't know how. Stand for those of you who are where I was, where I am, and really take your life away from your avoidance, away from your addiction, away from things, not the things you don't want to be in control, and realize you are in control. I think that's the most important part of, I was kind of avoiding myself, was that you are in control, and it's now time to realize that. And that's through TMD, that's through working with Coach and I. This is my stand. It's for getting this word out, getting this program to the people who need it most, people like me.
That was great. Thanks for your honesty. You've done some awesome work. You and I would not have this opportunity if it wasn't for your commitment to doing your work, which looked like confronting that you were avoiding, and confronting that you were avoiding, examining, avoiding. A quick recap on today is what we're talking about is driving life extraordinary and sober. And today's interaction is about avoiding and exploring all the ways in which we go about avoiding. And it's in the avoidance where we all set ourselves up for the opportunity to need to cope and manage with what we're avoiding. We avoid, and then we set up that we've got to cope and manage with what we're avoiding. You know, I don't tell the truth, I lie, and then I have to deal with that I've lied. And rather than dealing with that I lied, I, go use. And we explored that through avoiding. What I think you did a great job of talking about people, places, things. We sabotage our ability. We sabotage ourselves from building emotional capacity. Being able to emotionally deal with something, a breakdown in our lives, divorce or anxiety or rejection or whatever it might be. And then that we're unable to experience or accept our feelings. Now we're driven back to relapse. We're driven driven back to what we know. Yeah. So I trust that those of you watching this video for the first time, you've learned a lot. Maybe you're triggered or pissed off as a result of some of the conversations we've had. Again, below, you'll see my contact information. You'll see Paul's contact information. Reach out, come join a class and begin to do your work, where you can explore the possibility of avoiding and explore what's truly possible for you. Paul, anything you want to say to complete today's video?
I want to acknowledge your devotion to this work, and your commitment to me, commitment to the community, and commitment to the people watching this and the people who need to watch this. It's who really, those of us out there that don't know this exists, has been a limit to our lives. And so I commend you for your work with us as well. So thank you.
You got it. It's my pleasure. And those of you watching, I look forward to interacting with you in a way that we can do something about it. Speak to you soon.